Rights clause, yeah.
There is a general conflict, there's an arbitration.
Yeah. Arbitration.
So there are all of these things that I think we don't think about when we're getting a job. We happen to get a job, right?
Yeah.
And we're happy to collect that salary, so we're flipping through and signing. It's definitely a situation where I'm looking at moonlighting is not your time.
Yeah.
And I understand we all, and I'm a big proponent of intellectual property, we feel like we own the fruits of our brain. And we should.
We should.
However, if you are working for a current consulting company, the model you built for that company is not yours.
So the legal term for that is if the IP was performed or developed within the scope of your employment, that intellectual property belongs to the employer.
Exactly.
Right? And so that's really, really important. So yes, you could certainly start a side hustle, but I would highly encourage you to check your company's policies, handbooks, etc., just to make sure you don't run afoul of any organizational policies, particularly because that may be the organization that funds your side hustle until it becomes profitable. So you don't want anything that could potentially impact that.
So, and I will say this, I used to work for an employer that would go after people for their side hustle.
Conflict of interest type of thing.
And I have seen them launch $1 million lawsuits to recoup $1,500. Why? Because they can.
They can.
And because it's a deterrent.
Certainly a deterrent.
And so really understanding the implications, and that's not to say don't do it.
You can't, yeah.
But it's to say be aware.
Be aware.
Well, one of the things I'm thinking about, like, you're working for Wells Fargo as a financial consultant, and then you do business coaching and finances. So if they find that out, because I'm sure there's some paper that you've signed that says you can't do that, and so anytime someone says to me that they work for a corporation and they're doing it, I instantly don't want to be involved. It normally is, now if you formally work for that, like for Wells Fargo, and now you do, I'm like all for it. But I'm very cautious when someone is working for a company and then is giving similar. Now you can do it. You just have to use your own research, your own documentations. It should not look like the same documents I would get if I went to Wells Fargo or whoever. And I've seen some slap logos, and we can easily do a search and see if they match up. But it is you're walking on a thin surface. So you don't want to. You want to be cautious about that. Not discourage you from doing it. Just do your research. Get counsel, legal counsel.
Yeah. Again, people do it all the time, and a lot of organizations don't have such policies, right? So depending on the size of organization, what your level is within the organization. Certainly, if you're C-suite executives, you have proximity to trade secrets and confidential information and so forth. There's a lot more scrutiny around those executives, but certainly if you're on the front lines, it may not be so much, right? So absolutely consult with us, employment lawyers, etc., to be able to advise you on those levels of issues.
So let's take it a step further. So I'm taking your advice. Yeah. I'm not gonna work on the clock. I'm not gonna side hustle on my current jobs. Yeah. I left, right?
Yeah.
One of the things
that leap of faith.
You took the leap of faith. You jumped.
Yes,
you jumped.
But one of the things I am also seeing is people don't read that what is it, a termination clause?
I know, like a 2-year.
I had a non-compete for X amount of years, and I know I like to read the law, so I think I feel like in my head I know a little bit about a little bit. But one of the things we're seeing is those non-competes, how strong are they? So for example, when I left my employer, I had a 5-year non-compete globally. Yeah. And I consulted my attorney, and they were like, okay, we're gonna slice and dice this, right? Yeah. Because, I will say this just as my own opinion, I don't know that you can prohibit somebody from making a living for a long amount of time, but they have some rights.
They do, right? So the law is pretty clear, and depending on the type of non-compete you have. So to your point, we're seeing this a lot leaning into the whole tech space, right? Your clients are global, right?
Yeah.
So, but the issue then becomes duration, right? So you said 5 years, and so it's funny dealing with this like today.
Yeah.
And then the issue then becomes what's reasonable.
Right.
Oftentimes, you know, so in this case, it was a 5-year global. You can't create this marketplace. You can't do these things right for 5 years. Why did you sign it? But that's a separate issue. But we're in it now, right? And so the only thing we have is case law that says, yeah, North Carolina will recognize the global aspect of it, but no more than 6 months, right? So now we have to try to renegotiate, but that's hard because it then becomes, I'm a breach and you sue, but if you sue, it's a good chance you'll lose, right? Because no court will enforce this, and it's not all that reasonable, right? So with non-competes, it's geography and duration, and it has to be reasonable. But we can't look at. But then more importantly, it just can't be to protect your business interests, right? So so it's just like, oh, I'm going to keep you away, so we can't necessarily compete per se. So we have to be thoughtful about that. But you're right, people sign them and have no clue what they're signing, and that's problematic. And I see that not just with employees, but also subcontractors, consultants, anyone that could potentially compete with your company. You need to.
And I love how you brought in. I'm sorry.
Yeah, business partners, because we do a lot of buy sales of businesses, right? So if I buy you out, I'm not going to pay you $500,000 for you to just go across the street and use the money that we just paid you to compete with the business.
Yes.
Right.
Wow.
So oftentimes people they get into these transactions and they don't think about the long-term implications of it. It's like, oh, well, we just bought them out, but they just opened another restaurant up the street. And I'm like, well, did you have... there was nothing in the contract.
What was your agreement? And I asked the same question. So people, I think because I'm very personable, bat my eyelashes.
Yeah.
But I think there's a certain amount of comfort. But they say, well, I'm going to take this. This is a good investment. And I'm always like, or should I do this? You know, is this how I should move? Okay, what is it that you're trying to get out of this situation? And I'm finding, and what I tell people in consultation with speaking to an attorney and creating documentation is you have to know what you want out of this. So if you just want to buy your partner out and you don't care what they do you understand the implications?
Yeah.
If what you want is, you know what, I need the funds and I'll suffer the consequences, to me, I want to make sure that people are at least aware of the ramifications beforehand, because I can tell you, I've seen people on the back end of a transaction. It's different once the money changes hands.
Oh,
or it's different.
It's real different
when $1 is made, right?
Right. And one of the things that I saw, and I like that you brought up the state laws that you have to abide by as well with the non-compete. But what I've seen more from members of BBOC is having partnerships and not knowing your partners, and they end up stealing money or they end up doing something that does not follow your mission, and then you're in a place where you're forced to buy them out, and you pretty much either have to dissolve the business or go bankrupt.
Yeah.
And I've seen it more than once, and of course we don't publicize these things. We just kind of aid our members, hold their hands, like I was saying. But those things you have to, when you form a partnership with someone, you got to make sure that you sit down in the beginning with someone like Bobby and go over what it's going to look like if this don't work out, because I'm seeing that it doesn't work out more than it does.
And it doesn't, because to your point, everyone, oh, that's my soror, or we went to high school together, that's my family. Oh, this person would never do such and such, right? I found that people, even those that sometimes have high integrity, make ill-advised judgments when it comes to when money's involved, right? And if there's a stressor on either side, you got partners who go through divorces or suffer a different type of loss. And then you think about, well, what does that do to the business,
yeah.
right? So there is due diligence on both sides. I don't really care how well we know each other, but it's different. Yeah. When we get into business with each other, you start seeing things that you don't necessarily get an opportunity to see, and then you're not comfortable asking the hard questions. So I play the, not necessarily the bad, but I ask the questions that nobody, you really want to ask them, but you're afraid of how this person may perceive it. Well, do they not trust me, or so forth, right? But it's just one of those things. I'll ask the question on behalf of both of you just to make sure we have clarity.
Exactly. So let's flip this conversation on its head. So we have talked about the adversarial points of the law.
Which is the best part.
Which you know,
that's the meat.
I would just say I like that part too. I was like, I love a good old messy conflict, and I get to dig out. First of all, it's very lucrative.
Long as 8 hours.
Long as 8 hours.
Yeah.
It's very lucrative, but I enjoy nuance. But let's talk about how to make the law work for your business.
Sure.
So we talk about, kind of the building blocks of revenue. You touched on a point very early on about intellectual property. So I'm going to let you properly define intellectual property, and then we'll go from there, because I get tons of questions about copyrights and trademarks and patents that I can't answer. But let's start there. What is intellectual property?
Yeah, it's just that. The operative word is it's intellect, right? It's that idea, right? It's that concept that every business germinates from some level of intellectual property. What happens next is really up to you, right? So there are 4 primary forms of intellectual property, or IP. Patent law, right? So protecting inventions and so forth. Trademarks, so you have logos and slogans and so forth. You have copyright, right? So a lot of folks, music, photography, things of that nature. And then trade secrets. So everybody, Coca-Cola, KFC, those are trade secrets, right? So those intellectual property, even to the extent of, and we get this a lot in business, to say, look, if I'm hiring a videographer or somebody who's creating content for me, common is whoever creates it owns it, right? And so it's really important that when if I'm hiring a creative to do work for me, I don't care if it's $300 or whatever it is. We're going to put in place a work for hire contract, which basically says I'm hiring you to do this work, but it's important that they're drafted properly, because oftentimes people will have a work for hire contract as it relates to their IP to make sure they own it. But it's one of those things to say, is it a transfer and a sign, right? So I need you to transfer it to me and assign your rights to me. Right, so it's a 2-part language that needs to be captured in the work for hire, and so that's really important. So when we work and I hire you, I'm hiring you for this specific purpose, and I want to make it very clear that you don't own the intellectual property. So for when we talk about tech companies, I can't tell you how many times they call me and say, well, the developer won't turn over the code.
Exactly.
Let me see the contract. Oh, well, that's why, because they own the code.
They own the code.
But I paid them. It doesn't matter. They created the code. And so now I got to negotiate a buyout of the code that you already paid for.
Yes.
So
and,
so.
And so
y'all are learning something today, I'm telling y'all.
I've encountered that at least a dozen times, at least. And one of the things, offshoring, I see drives that a lot. So again, we talk about putting costs into perspective, right? Yeah. So building a platform, coding, building technology is expensive.
It is.
And
I'm living that.
You live in it. Bobby is, we're going to talk about his company at the tail end, but he is a tech entrepreneur as well. Yeah. So the cost of building out something from scratch that no one's ever done is expensive. Yeah. And one of the quick alternatives, somebody would say, have you considered India? I'm not. I have varying thoughts on offshoring and using an offshore set of experts or tech experts or coders to do your work. I think it's fine, but one of the things you have to understand how they generally make money. and they make money by saying, "Oh yeah, we can build that thing for you
for cheap,
for relatively cheap." You know, I've seen people spend, $25,000 on something that should have cost them $150,000, and so you feel like I spent $25,000. It's a whole lot of money for you. It is. But what I'm finding is the way that firm makes money is they built it, and now what they do is take your label off and say, "Oh, now I can mass produce this or do it over and over and over and over and over again for a bunch of other companies that can slap their logo on it." And what you find, I worked on a really cool project where we were doing some battery and geolocation stuff, and so I was looking for a coder, and all they were going to do was do plugins, which meant they took something they already did, something else they already did, something else they did, put them together, make them talk to each other, and boom, there you go. That's how they make their money in a scalable way. And so you're right when you see you don't own the code. You have to ask for very, very specific language and very specific things. It's the first thing as an investor when I'm looking at a tech company. Okay, who owns this? Because I have gotten way into due diligence, and I mean 3 or 4 months into due diligence, where we're working on a platform, and I just say, "Okay, well, you don't own this," and they go, "Yeah, I paid for it."
That's huge, because that could get you. That is huge.
So what we had to do, they said, "I paid for this. Here's my receipt. Here's my purchase order. Here is," and I'm saying, "Yeah, you don't own this." And in order to make the improvements that they needed, they had to start over.
Wow.
And starting because they got stuck in this place where they went back to the person who coded, and they said, "Oh, okay, I'll sell you another version. Wait, I got to pay another $50,000. I already paid you $25,000. It should be a tweak."
And you just lost an investment because you now can't invest in them because you can't deal with it.
I mean, I think we all have seen enough shows of Shark Tank to know it's like, is that proprietary? Can someone and the proprietary nature is I own it. It's specific to me. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's important. And even if I paid this person to take these photos for me, and now they're all over, the internet, or they've licensed it to a marketing agency, and you're like, "Oh, that's mine," right? They were the photographer. They took it. You guys had no contract or anything to suggest who actually owns it, right? So it could get very, very problematic. So I say if people can make money on it, make sure you own it.
Yeah.
Right.
And one thing I'm thinking about, because now people contact me from other state mayors, different people, and they'll say, "How did you do what you did here?" And I'm so glad early on we create a playbook and get it licensed, and so that I can take this and say, "This is what we have. You can peep at it if you pay for it, and if you really want it, you can buy it." And it's like, so I'm not just going over there giving them all the advice, and then they may or may not partner, they may or may not work with me, but they now have all of that intellectual property to know how to do exactly, emulate what we're doing here. So everything that your experiences, put it on paper and make sure that you don't just give it out to people. And I guess this can fall under trade secrets somewhat.
We're going to touch on trade secrets very specifically when we talk about patents, but I love what you just said, because when we think about revenue models, I hear that and I think franchising, right? So what's a franchise model, right? What you did was say, "Here's our playbook," and we're making an assumption. We're going to say everything is ceteris paribus and it's all set equal, that if you do these things, you will have like success. And so one of the things I know, and this is for all of the people who are starting out and the seasoned people on both sides, is people think they're entitled to your experience for free. And they are not.
And don't even feel like they are. Don't even make you feel like they
are. It is one of the biggest arguments I have seen on social media regarding businesses and playbooks. I asked them for advice, and now they too good to give me advice because they done made it.
Especially with BBOC, just because we push businesses don't mean that I have to give you my strategy.
You're not the library.
Like, I mean, it happens every day, though. It's like almost this guilt thing, and it used to bother me, but no more. And I'm thankful to No Grease, actually the founders of No Grease. And this isn't even a one-on-one conversation. We was on a panel together, and they were talking about how they developed their franchise, how now they can sell their company to other people, and what they had to go through to become a franchise. And it made me think, I don't want to be a franchise, but I want to do chapters, and I want to, you know what I'm saying? I was like, I need to follow some of this. So I did more research and, hired legal counsel. And it's like, everything you know is valued. And it's just, I'm thankful for No Grease for being so open about their process. So those panels and those things that we're saying that Bobby goes through, all of these business things, you can learn a lot.
And
shout out to No Grease.
Yeah, shout out No Grease for sure. Yeah.
But thinking about free advice. So you're an attorney. You do consultations.
I do.
Are your consultations free?
They are not.
They are not.
They are not. So of course, just like most companies, when we first start, you want everybody, right, to come see you, and you provide the free advice and so forth. But as a service-based company, the commoditization that I sell is my time.
Yes.
Right, and so I have to make sure that we have value-based pricing. We offer a ton of value, and we expect you to pay for it. I can't just come into your shop and get cookies, donuts, whatever y'all done made all this stuff and I'm out.
That's a good point.
It's just like, so at some point in time, you have to come to the table and pay. And we're at the point now that we're very selective about who we work with. Right? So, if it's going to be too much of a headache, it's not worth it for us, right? Yeah, for me, it's one of those things to say, look, I'm here, I'm not here. If you want somebody to just tell you everything you want to hear, I'm not the guy for you.
Right.
Right? My job is to help you go to the next level, right? If I'm advising you, like, look, I don't know about this business partner, or I don't know if that's the right investment for you, and oftentimes it's very circumstantial, right?
Yes.
I'm pressed for money, and I need to make a decision, right? Or this issue is happening, or I'm in a comparison trap, so they did it, so now I got to go.
I like that terminology.
So it's one of those things where it's like, well, I don't really. But then you see them do it, and then a couple months later, it's this creditor's calling, or this person's calling.
Yes.
I need you to send a letter for this, right? Yes. And so it's one of those things. Of course, you step in and you help because you want to do the right thing, but there are a lot of avoidable mistakes that we happen, and we all, no matter how seasoned we are, we all make mistakes in business, right? That's just fair game. It's just gonna happen, right? But then there are some that are like.
Those holes have been fallen into over and over and over.
Right.
You can drive around.
You can drive around that.
So we talked about trademarking and copywriting a bit.
Yeah.
Patents. I have a lot of people that think because I came up with an idea, it's worth a patent. So
yeah, I think there's a lot of demystification around I need a patent, and so for the record, we don't do patents. Patent law is very specialized. Those attorneys have to sit for the patent bar. One bar was enough for me. So, but a lot of folks do, right? It's like, well, I have this thing that I want to get it patent, but they really need a trademark, or they may need a copyright. So there is a lot of education around what is the right level of protection for you, and that's just something that we'll have to work through. But you're absolutely right. It's just one of those things, and it could be all three.
Exactly,
right.
They can work together.
So you may need so if you take George Foreman, it's like, okay, you have the George Foreman grill. That process was patent, right? But he also trademarked the name, right? So that's important too, right? So then I can license that name to multiple parties to generate additional revenue, and I think that's the franchise model as well, right? Once you trademark or you have some IP that you can license, then that's the model, that's the direction. Because unfortunately, it's like, why am I going to go through all this effort and work when you've already proven it? It's been accepted. There's product market fit. There's there's something here that I can buy into, right? And so that's the model of franchising, right? And we're starting to see a lot more franchise clients. Shout out again to Novaries, they're on the roll too.
Yes.
So it's important that, you know, obviously whatever the model is, having some IP is so valuable.
It builds value, and it sits on your books, and when somebody like me is coming in, maybe as an investor or maybe to acquire you, I'm looking at all of these things, the intangibles, you know, is what we call them. But I would also say, and this is my plug. I worked a long time in intellectual property. Do not, similar to LegalZoom, do not do those have an idea, invent helps of the world. I have seen more often than not, people really lose money on using those services. And I mean $10, $15, $20, $50,000. And I'm also seeing this nuanced model of, well, I don't have $15,000 out of the gate. What they do is they'll cut you a loan. And that loan, that $15,000 that they leverage you, you're paying that money, but you're also paying interest. And so they're making money on selling you this thing on your idea. And I go talk to an intellectual property attorney, do it. And, you know, we'll call it a step down because they're not attorneys, but patent agents may be an alternative way for you to get some expertise. I also want to tell people, if you file a patent, it will get published. So if there is something you are trying to keep in your back pocket, putting it in a patent. Now, there are ways to keep a patent from publishing. But trade secrets is a real thing. That means create it and shut it down. Your mouth. Shut it down.
When I tell you, like, this last 45 minutes is so much free advice. It's not legal counsel. Advice. Like, I mean, come on. Like, we have basically laid out, you know, how to legit start your business, how to franchise it, or at least get on that level, you know, to start franchising it. All of these things, don't matter if you're a mom and pop, don't matter if you're a nonprofit, all these things are of value. And I'm just sitting here, I'm just like mind blown. I do have one question. Patents. With a patent, can an idea, and I see this posed a lot, can an idea be patent, or does it need to be an actual thing?
Yeah, so you can't patent an idea.
That's what I thought.
It's the utility of something, right? And so that piece, it's you're better off keeping it some level of trade secret or what have you. But at some point, it has to manifest beyond an idea.
And I wanted to make sure, because I don't want somebody to come out and be like, well, y'all say the idea can be patent. No.
You know, but function. Like, think about that.
Yeah. You have to have, and the term of art is slipping from me right now. But you absolutely have to have, we'll call it some legs and some meat to the concept. So, one of my favorites, the space elevator. I think we should have an elevator that goes from Earth to Mars. That was an actual
That's a great idea, but I guess.
What are the utility? What's the mechanics?
How
does it work?
Right. All of the research, all of that.
Yeah. And so, you know, you have to be able to work it out. And a nuance of patents is you have come up with one way. A good patent agent or attorney will come up with protecting multiple ways.
Right.
So we're gonna put a pin in all of that great legal advice, talking about leveraging the law to benefit your business. One more leverage: contact books. How do you protect maybe your Rolodex, or any thoughts on protecting your Rolodex or your client list, or what are your thoughts just on, is that something we should all be pursuing? Is that something we can keep close to the vest and use as an asset?
And could you add to that cybersecurity with that?
Oh man,
because that's something that I have to be conscious of, having a large list of people.
I think we may have had a conversation about directories.
Yes, we
right?
did. Yeah.
and so a lot of it is, I can't sell. So this whole notion of privacy, I think a lot of small businesses don't quite understand the significance of having relevant terms and use conditions on their website, an updated privacy policy, how you handle data, and what kind of data you're collecting, right? Oftentimes they don't treat it as if it's their own data. And so how would you feel, right, if someone just haphazardly just left your contact information just laying around, and only thing it just needs to get in the hands of the wrong person, right? Yes. So it's important that even when you're building a website or for web designers, etc., that you don't stick up some bland standard privacy policy that could potentially expose you in the event that you, and certainly if you don't even have the right insurance to protect you in the event something went sideways. So that's important. Confidentially around supplier lists and customer lists and all those things, make sure it's all confidential, right? But you have to have it in a confidentiality agreement or some level of confidential information in your contracts, right? Because otherwise, how do you protect it? There are a number of exceptions to confidentiality, one being if it's already in the public domain, right? It's not confidential if I can Google it and find it, right? And I've seen investor agreements or brokerage investors who's like, well, you can't contact my potential investors, right? Because but for my relationship with them, you wouldn't necessarily have that relationship. And so if you can't find them independently, it's confidential, right? So you have the right to protect that, right? And so it's important that people understand the power of information and the steps that you need to take to protect it.
Right. So we could talk about all of this literally for hours and hours and hours.
I just want to bring up one comment too, because we see this a lot with small businesses, is the contrast between a proposal, when they draft proposals, and a legitimate contract, right? And so oftentimes I'm not a fan of just straight up proposals because they don't have all the terms and conditions that a standard contract would have, right? It's just, hey, here's what we do, here's the scope of services, here's how much I'm going to charge you, sign. Right, but the moment something goes sideways, I put a deposit down for the service, I change my mind, but I want to get my money back. Well, there's nothing in there about, termination of services, partial refunding of services, what that process would look like. Again, my favorite, dispute resolution. None of those things are built into a proposal. So yes, it could certainly be enforceable if both parties signed it, because all you need is offer acceptance and consideration to form an enforceable contract. But when something goes sideways with proposals, and I see it all the time, they'll have these really beautiful proposals all typed up, and I'm like, oh, where's the
T's and C's?
There's no meat to this proposal. And so people get upset, and it was like, well, I thought I could enforce it. I'm like, we can, but then you're relegated to state law and other sorts of things. So it's important that you take the time to develop the contracts that fit your situation so that you don't have to relate or rely on state law or some other body of law to decide what happens to your situation. So I wanted to just say that because I get so many proposals or emails where they agree to do it via email and so forth, and I'm like, y'all do X amount of millions of dollars and you still entering into contracts via email.
Yeah, and we are very much process oriented, and so first of all, I do not create proposals willy-nilly. If we're moving to proposal stage, I'm not guessing as to whether or not it's going to get executed. Also, I'm selective about the information we put into a proposal. And then we did have T's and C's, terms and conditions, drafted specifically to go with our proposal. So no proposal leaves my firm without it passing an attorney's eyes. And even down to their, that we can do that service too. We've had our attorney come back and say,
we got to amend this to change that. Absolutely.
Great extra revenue stream. No, it's not going to be worth the cost later on. But, so that is an excellent point. So, you game for lightning round?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, we're going to lightning round and we're going to get out of here because we have kept Bobby probably way past his...
This is fine. Maybe we can come back.
We do a part 2, 3, 10, and 12. All right. So, give us the name and what you do as an entrepreneur.
IntelliDoc,
yes.
Which is my legal technology company, and we do contract and workflow automation for corporate legal departments.
Love it. Okay, 2. Where did you go to school, Bobby?
Which time? Law school?
All the times. all the degrees.
So, University of Central Florida, undergrad, Everest University for an MBA, and then Charlotte Law Firm.
Now, see, I didn't even know Bobby had an MBA. So, look, I didn't miss out on a whole section right there.
Yeah.
Okay. Top 3 passions other than law?
Reading, bookworm, traveling, and I'm a homebody. I just like, despite being out all the time.
Despite being out, I was going to say.
I still like to just be home.
You like your house and your life and your wife and your child.
Yes, I do. Love them to death.
Favorite thing in Charlotte, because you're a transplant.
Yeah.
Favorite thing to do in Charlotte currently?
I'm a foodie, so I'm like always on Charlotte agenda, finding out like where's the latest foodie spots.
He likes food, okay.
Yeah. You can tell I put on like quite a bit, but I'm trying.
I'm all about foodie.
I'm giving you the eye roll right now, okay. Last question. If there was one pain point in the world that you could magic wand it, what would you magic wand and get rid of?
Childhood hunger. Very passionate about that. And really just because I grew up poor.
Yeah.
And so I have a soft spot for people who struggle and can't put food on their table, and I'm blessed to be on the other side of that. And so if I could have a hand in that, I would.
I love it.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, how can someone reach out to you if they want to hire you and get a consultation?
Yeah, they can visit us on the web. That's www.rlgcounsel.com, or on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at rlgcounsel.com.
Awesome.
And it was rlgcounsel.com, correct?
Yep.
All right, perfect.
And then finally, this week is going to be, a busy week. It's going to be a tough week. Where can we find Bobby in these streets?
Wow. I have a ton of workshops this week. So Minority Contractors Association, doing some work with them. And then the Diversity Council, doing some work in terms of just legal workshops. So, yeah.
Awesome. Cathay, where can we find you this week?
On the 1st, we're having an Innovators Council meeting for Charlotte. So go to BBLC on Facebook or BBLCLT.com. You can see if you want to be a part of the Innovators Council for the new initiative that we're doing, which is Startup Trade Charlotte. And then we have a members meeting February the 8th. And that'll be at Stats University, and that's at 4 p.m. So if you want to join BBLC, if you're a member, you can come out and meet other members, meet our board member, meet our executive team. And so again, that's February the 8th at Stats at 4 p.m.
Beautiful. And myself, I am going to be recouping from last week's busy speaking schedule and my second run-in with the flu. So I'm still on the mend from that, but I have written another op-ed for QC Metro that'll get published shortly here, so look out for that. I am talking all about my opinion on diversity and Black History Month.
All right.
So I should get plenty of hate mail based on that.
Nah.
Well, this has been quite the conversation, and I want to say thank you to Bobby for coming and
for having me.
Dropping just wisdom and jewels on everybody's head today. And Cathay, as always, it's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure as well.
We are going to sign off. This is In Your Business. I'm Dr. Shante.
I'm Cathay Dawkins.
We're with Bobby Robinson, and we'll see you next week.
All right, have a
Bye,
good day.
guys.
Take care.